Hello, everyone. So for those who just joined, we'll be starting shortly. In the meantime, if you can tell us in the chat where you're calling from, that would be amazing.
Hello.
Is that Neil?
Hello, mate. How are you?
How you doing? I saw your name. I thinking that can't be Neil.
Mate, obviously, I'm not looking to kickstart my career in tech, as you know. But I saw you popped up on LinkedIn, and I just wanted to jump on here to support you. Really, I wanted to say hello. I'm going to sit in the background and watch this, but you know, like I said, I wanted to say hello. B wanted to support you on this, and C, I think to a little bit, I'll take 5% of helping you kickstart your career in tech.
I'd say so. I'd say so for sure.
And so, you know, if there's anything I can input off the back of this, I'll happily do so. So, look, good luck to you. Like I said, I'll sit in the background and I'll be watching away. And mate, give me a shout when you're done, and we'll have a catch up soon. Yeah.
Definitely, man. I really appreciate that. Neil
Thank you so much.
Neil was my my boss at Apprenticeship, so definitely I really have to give him props for definitely kickstarting my career.
Well,
thank you so much for joining us.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. It was a pleasure working with Adil, and I knew he was going to go and do good things. And I've been following his career in the background. So yeah, like I said, I wanted to support him. And if anyone's got any questions around sort of any form of apprenticeship or anything like that, I've been in IT for 25 years, so very happy to input if necessary. But I'll now go on mute and keep a watching brief. I'll catch you soon, mate.
I will do, man. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
So yeah, we can definitely start now. Thank you so much for joining us again today. It's great to see some familiar names and faces. So I'd like to ask, if you can, please switch on your camera so we can have an interactive session. But if you can, that's fine. So many of you might know me already. My name is Banu. I lead partnerships and engagement at NAYA. NAYA is a diversity recruitment platform connecting skilled underrepresented groups from 35+ countries to tech and data jobs globally. We also offer free access to events, networks, and training opportunities. Currently, over 100 employers are hiring through NAYA, and we are offering a £500 sign-on bonus to any candidate who finds a job through the platform, plus £250 if anyone you refer does find a job through the platform. So we encourage all of you, those who are looking for tech and data jobs, to create their profiles today on NAYA's platform and start getting matched to opportunities that fit your skills and preferences. So I will paste NAYA's platform link in the chat to register. I'll also paste a link to a video which it shows you step by step on how to create your profile on NAYA's platform. So now I think is the time to introduce you to our fantastic guest speaker, who will lead the rest of the session. So Adil is a Cloud Labs developer at Cloud Academy. He has got a lot of certifications such as Microsoft. He's a Microsoft certified trainer, former Azure engineer, and loves all things Azure. And he is also a certified Azure administrator. So he hasn't studied any computer science degrees at university, but instead went through an apprenticeship route, which paved the way into a career in tech. So he will give more details about this later on. And over to you, Adil. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Benny. I really, really appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Kind of gave a brief introduction of where I started, but to kind of add to that, first I'll share my screen. I think that should be all there. Cool. Right, so today we're going to talk about how you can get into tech. And I think it's fair to say that over the last couple of years, with COVID happening, tech has seen such a boom. So many more tech roles have appeared in the job market, and so many more tech companies have appeared as well. And if there's any company that's kind of, or any type of sector that's survived, you could say, the onslaught of COVID and the lockdowns in the last couple of years, it's been tech, and it's done exceptionally well. Amazon has tripled, I think, in value since during that time within COVID. So tech is hot, it's booming. We're going to talk about what tech is, what does it mean to be in tech, what is a tech role, and then what kind of things can you do within tech. And obviously the biggest question you have is, how can you get there? So we're going to go through a couple of different pieces, you could say, of the puzzle as we get to our answering our question. So just a tiny bit about me. I don't want to spend here for too long. My name is Adil. I am what's known as a Cloud Labs developer, which sounds really, really fancy. And what that means is basically I make hands-on environments for people to learn from. So whenever you're going about learning your IT stuff, you may come across my material online, especially if you're going through Cloud Academy, which is the company that I work for. So I make these hands-on environments for you to basically practice your skills as you're trying to learn and you're certifying. And we're going to go through a couple of those things as well, and why what I do is actually very apt for getting into tech as well. I'm also an Azure trainer, and that basically means that I teach about cloud. Simple as that. I'll go into a bit about that a little later as well. And I'm also a tech education evangelist. I wrote that down at the end because I thought it sounded really sick, but that's really fancy terms for saying I try to help people get into tech, and I love tech a lot. And I basically teach people how to get educated in tech too. So let me go on to the next page. So what does it mean to work in a tech role? This question, I was putting together this presentation literally at like 1 a.m. in the morning, and this question bugged me so much. There was a Twitter space, for those who are familiar what Twitter spaces are, which is basically kind of like a live stream that happened approximately like 4 to 6 months ago. And someone was basically giving a talk about how to get into tech. And a lot of people joined, a lot. It was really, really popular. But they kept talking about roles that had nothing to do with tech. There was a big misnomer of what tech was. And it really bothered a lot of us who actually work in tech, who are developers, who are coders, who are cloud people, DevOps, etc. So I really wanted to start off this entire session to really break it down. What does it even mean to get a tech role, or what does it mean to work in tech? So I tried to make it as simple as possible. And I literally cut this line and rewrote this line like 5 times. But the very simplest I can put it is you're using these things called technologies to make solutions. You may have a problem, you may have built a product, but you utilize these technologies, these stacks, to basically put together and create and manage this solution or product that you're building. Nowadays, you can think of it as computers. So gone are the days of the Industrial Revolution where technology isn't much computer-based, and pretty much anytime we talk about technology nowadays, we really are talking about computing things, software, hardware, etc. Whenever you're working in a tech role or as a techie, generally speaking, you'll be working with technologies such as hardware, software. So as a techie, you're versed usually in a lot of different types of technologies. But what's key, and it's really, really important, is working in tech or having a tech role does not necessarily mean you have to work for a tech company. You don't have to work for Facebook or Google to be considered as someone who is techie. And that's something that this Twitter space unfortunately got really, really wrong and sold a lot of dreams to a lot of people. They were like, you can work for Facebook, you can work at Google. And then when they talked about the roles that you can work there, I was thinking, but these aren't really tech roles. Every company has roles, every type of role in all types of companies. And at tech companies, for sure, you'll be exposed to some degree to the technologies that they're working with and working on. But to be a techie, to work in tech, means you are hands-on to some degree with those technologies, either creating them, building them, managing them, configuring them, or even supporting them. So I really wanted to get that out of there. That's what being a techie means. You are technically advanced. You are technically inclined, meaning you have technical skills. It doesn't mean that you don't have any non-technical skills either, and we can certainly get into that a little bit later. But I just wanted to make that really clear first and foremost, if anyone had that kind of question. So that is what tech is, and that is what kind of having a tech role means. And every single company, every product they create needs tech. And as a result, needs a techie to be able to configure, manage, build, and support those technologies as well. And that's why it's really important. You can work for a company, you can work for a healthcare company, you can work for the NHS, and you can be a techie. You can be a cloud architect. You could be head of IT, as Neil was. You could do a lot in tech. It doesn't mean you have to work for a tech company. So we're gonna get that way. There are loads of different, I call them disciplines within tech, and there's more than just what you see on the page here. I've kind of, you can say, worked in the niche of cloud, and that has its own fancy terms and terminologies around that. But you'll see a lot of these different kind of, what you can say, different disciplines within the tech space, different spheres, different sectors, different sections. DevOps is a very, very popular one. Maybe a lot of you have come across that name. Programming, I'm sure the majority of you have, or coding, the majority of you have heard of that. And then you have cybersecurity of data. There's a bunch more. There's machine learning, there's AI, and then there's a combination of all the ones that you see on the top as well here. There's a lot. And the question you may have is, what's right for me? Where do I go from? Where do I start from? Where do I go? What do I know is good for me? You may be really scared to take the leap to get into tech. One, knowing that there's so many different disciplines within tech, but also because you don't know what's right for you necessarily. Maybe you feel as though, I never went to university. What if I have to be really, really good at coding? These are a lot of frequently asked questions that a lot of people have when it comes to being a techie. Do I need to be really good at coding? Because I don't think I can do that. Let me tell you here, I didn't do a computer science degree, as Banu said. I did a maths and economics degree. I thought I was just going to stay in maths the whole time. I started my PGCE. Day one, I dropped out. I was like, this is too long. I don't want to do this. I can't be asked. And I really had to think about what did I want to do? What did I enjoy? And I remembered in school that I really enjoyed IT. I liked building things. I like breaking things down. I like problem solving as well. So I thought career in IT probably would be a good thing to go into. I didn't really know what discipline within IT was great. And I think a lot of people kind of have that same sentiment as well. I want to get into tech. It's not a bold claim, but it's certainly a big sphere to say I want to get into tech, but where in tech? I started as a support analyst, an apprentice support analyst with Neil, who's here as well. He wasn't an apprentice support analyst, he was my director, but we worked for the same company. And the company that I worked for was an events management organization. They basically ran events and exhibitions around the world. You know, they weren't necessarily a tech company, but they certainly utilized tech. And I was there sort of doing first line stuff and doing a bunch of other things as well. That was my, what you'd call gateway. We're going to go into gateways a little later, but I certainly didn't have the university backing to get me into that kind of role, if that makes sense. So certainly you don't need to have a computer science degree. You don't even need to necessarily even have a tech related degree to get into these roles. And probably what would have been a good idea to do today, but I'd leave it to you to do in your own research, is go on LinkedIn jobs, go on a lot of these places where they're actually hiring for IT roles. Type in IT, for example, and go through the job description, and you'll see a lot of them don't even mention anything about a degree. Some do, don't get me wrong, but some don't. And I'll tell you, to this day, I have not applied for a single role, and I've been in about 4 or 5 roles since, not applied for a single role that's required a degree or even asked for one. So you don't need a degree, and I have a degree, and it's only 1 line on my CV, just as a formality and a technicality to put there on my CV. So even if you don't have a degree, there's certainly ways you can get into tech. And even if you have a degree that's not related to tech, even if it's not STEM, you still can get into tech. And I have wonderful examples. I help run a community, and I have wonderful examples of people who've come from construction, who've come from teaching, and they've basically done, and what we're going to go through in a little bit, their own self-learning and developing, and kickstarted their career that way. So I'm going to go through that also in a little bit. Do you have to be really good at coding? Hell no. I failed my Python module at uni. That was optional, by the way, so I chose it myself and I failed it. And I vowed to myself I would never do coding again in my life, or Python again in my life at the very least. And lo and behold, in my current placement, current job, sorry, I've had to learn Python. This part of my role, and it's not as bad as I thought it was. So sometimes you have bad experiences, but also sometimes you get to think that every single role requires you to be really good at coding, and certainly not. When I was at that first place, which was at Hive, when I was at my apprenticeship, we didn't do any coding, at all. I mean, the closest I got in that role was doing scripting, which is maybe just putting a couple of lines of code together, very small, and majority of that I copied and pasted from Google anyway. So you don't need to be fantastic at coding, but can it help? Potentially. And can it be something that you can teach yourself? Absolutely, especially if you failed a module at uni, like I did. Is the money good? Yeah, the money can be fantastic in tech, but it always depends on how you build your career. And if you always look at a single role as a 9 to 5, you want to go in, come out, maybe you may hold yourself back from reaching those potentials, not just your career potentials, but also the monetary and financial potentials you could be reaching if you put in some serious work for developing yourself in these roles. While I was at that apprenticeship role, I wasn't just trying to do first line stuff. I made sure I did second line stuff. And Neil knows I pushed to try and do third line stuff as well. And I forced my way into it, trying to do as many as I could. I worked with a couple of my colleagues there, and I, even if it was under the rug, I made sure I got out as much experience as I could from there. So it's really important. And I say this is one of my slogans, my key to life whenever you work anywhere is you're more than your JD. You're more than what the job description tells you you are, especially early in your career. You need to do as much as possible, and you really can push yourself into earning that great money and also finding stability in your career. And stability in a career outside of tech, in tech, it all kind of depends on you as well. Yeah, there's the sector, yeah, there's the company, whether they're doing good. You can't necessarily predict that. Sometimes you can see it coming from a long way away. 20 years ago, maybe you looked at the engineering industry in the UK and you realize, you know what? I don't think we're going to be an engineering hub anymore in the UK. And you may move yourself away from there. And that would be fantastic to do. You had the foresight to realize that and move away very early on. But still to this day, I come from an Asian background, and my parents would say, you have to become, the usuals, the traditionals, a doctor, lawyer, engineer, barrister, whatever. And there's nothing wrong with those careers. But if we're looking for a fruitful career where there is, you could almost say an uncapped, and no cap, no ceiling, then certainly a career in tech is a fantastic place to be. And because there's so many different disciplines, just like we saw, you can always move between them and find a place where you are stable. Cool. And maybe we'll go into a bit more detail about stability in the question and answers at the end. I do see some questions. Okay, cool. Cool. How do you know if it's the right move for you? How do you know you can find the discipline you like? We'll go into that in just a little bit. So now you kind of understand that this is what tech's about. This is what's involved within a tech role. How can you break into it? How can you now kickstart your tech career? And I use this all the time. It's just it's a three steps of the ladder to take to pretty much get into a tech career. And I say pretty much because circumstantially anything can happen. And we know that. So I never make any promises, and no one will ever make a promise. However, it certainly is a bulletproof, foolproof, proven way that people have got into tech. I've done it myself. You start off by learning. Start learning about technology right from the beginning. Let's take, for example, cloud. Maybe you've heard about Azure. You take that and you start learning about it. You take courses online, maybe a Udemy course, maybe a course on Data Camp or Code Academy, Cloud Academy. And you build yourself from learning from there. You literally are learning the theory. Okay, after you do that, what do you do? Showcase it. You have to actually put that skills to practice. The first way to do that is through labs. Labs are a fantastic way to get that hands-on experience without actually being in that job, because you're not obviously in that job right now. So you start by doing labs to understand these theoretical things that you learned in your courses. And then after that, which is the most important thing, is you build projects. Projects are a showcasing, a portfolio of your skills. And so what you would do is you'd create something, you'd build something using the things that you've learned in these courses, and you effectively put it on your profile, your CV, your resume, your GitHub page, for example. That tends to be usually a bit easier with programming, because you just literally code an application, or you do things with that, and then with the programming language that you're learning, and you upload it to, I'm simplifying the terms quite crudely here, upload, but you put it on your GitHub, for example, and your repository, and you basically have it there publicly for the world to see what you've created and built. But you can certainly do that with all other disciplines as well, be it DevOps, be it cybersecurity, be it cloud. Okay. And the reason you have to do this is because if you don't have the experience from actually working in these roles, then the projects bridge the experience gap. Projects bridge the experience gap. I'm gonna again roast that Twitter space that happened about 6 months ago, unfortunately. And one of the things they mentioned was, yeah, just volunteer. Ultimately, your time is really important, as much as time in the market, but time preparing to get into the market. That is fantastically important. And volunteering, and I'll get onto the other disciplines and gateways to getting into tech, but volunteering is not necessarily the best way to do that. Okay, like I said, your time is important, and especially for people who are making career changes, volunteering certainly may not be the best way to do that. But certainly doing projects, building something yourself, not only will you feel the satisfaction of having done so, you'll feel more confident in the skills that you're learning. And then when it comes to the interview, you won't even need to blag. You won't need to, trust me, because you've worked with these technologies now, you can talk about it. I built a 3-day application using Python, back and front end and the middle part. I'm not a developer, clearly, like that. But yeah, so that's what you can do. And finally, what I say, the third cherry on top is to certify yourself. If you can, look to get certified in the technology that you're learning about. If you're learning about cloud, try and get a fundamental cloud certification. It usually involves you sitting an exam, and after doing the exam, if you get past the pass mark, you basically will be awarded a badge and a certificate, that which you can put on your CV. And that will make you stand out from the thousands of other people who aren't doing that. But I did have a caveat here, and I just wanted to make sure this asterisk you guys are aware of. Certifications, I call, like I said, the cherry on top, the icing on the cake for your self-development, If you're learning and you're doing projects and you're doing labs, that is 90% of it, 90%. The certification is a 10%. If you just do certs and you don't do anything else, you're doing your learning for the certification, but you don't do projects, you don't do labs, you're not doing it to showcase your knowledge, then there's not really much to show. But if you do your projects, you do your labs, and then you certify, and you put all of that on your CV, you certainly have a very, very strong CV, enough to get into, hopefully, those entry-level roles and gateways that we're talking about. Let's have a quick pop quiz. We can have it in the chat here. It's hard to land a tech role with just certificates on my CV/resume. What would you say? Is that true or false? I want to see it in the chat. A or B, true or false, whatever you want to. Let me see what everyone's saying. Don't just look at everyone's answers. Be honest with yourself and genuinely think about it. It's hard to land a tech role with just certificates on your CV resume. Wait for a couple more. Exactly, Marsha. I said you need projects and labs. It is hard to land a tech role. It is hard to land a tech role with just certificates on my CV/resume. And that's why you see a lot of graduates who've only just come out of a degree. They're also finding it hard to get roles as well. A lot of the time, all they've got is a degree, and that's it. The only thing they've got to their name is their education. So that's why I keep saying projects and labs. These are things that will build your profile and build this resume and your CV so that you can get and break into these tech roles. Okay, so just remember, so it's a great, but they're the smallest reason for you to be landing your next tech role. And I can't remember why exactly I had this slide, but I think you projected basically just do projects. Nothing really much more than that. Cool, let's talk about gateways. So we spoke about disciplines earlier. Disciplines are the different pieces to the puzzle within tech, cloud, DevOps, etc. What are the different routes you can actually take to get into a tech role? And there's actually one I didn't even mention here, and I'm actually quite sad that I didn't mention it here. But let's talk about these ones first. So an apprenticeship is a fantastic way, I personally believe, to get into a tech role. Not only is it free, you're earning money, you're getting certificates at the same time, you're learning on the job, you're building your CV almost without trying. The trying bit is you actually have to do the work. But personally, I think it's a fantastic way to break into tech. I did it myself, and I used it to transition from a maths economics background into sort of IT and that tech space in general. And nowadays, actually, I did my apprenticeship in 2018 and 2019, I think, around that time. And I counted it. It was 1 year and 4 months. And I said to myself, when I went into the apprenticeship, so I'm not going to be here for any longer than 15 months. I said that to myself. I said, in that time, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be more than my JD. I'm going to be more than the role that I've been given. And I'm going to be more than this apprenticeship. I'm not going to be an apprenticeship first line analyst or apprentice first line support analyst. I'm going to be a technical support analyst that has first line, second line, and third line experience there. And I'm going to take that experience and I'm going to take it to my next job. I'm going to build my career with that. And thankfully, I was able to do that. So apprenticeship is a fantastic way to begin. It gives you the stepping stones to be able to do that. And generally speaking, depending on the level of apprenticeship you take, details how much time you'll have to stay in that apprenticeship, how long it will last for. So a level 3, I did a level 3 one that is between 12 and 15 months. You have a level 4 after that as well. If you want to take it, there's no obligation. But level 4 is between 15 and 18 months, I believe. And then you have what's known as a degree apprenticeship, which is fairly new. Only in the last sort of 45 years have I seen degree apprenticeships be an actual thing, I think. But certainly it's definitely brand new within the last 10 years. And a degree apprenticeship basically means you not only work on the job, earn a salary, gain certifications for free usually, because the ones that you get with the apprenticeship are free. But if your company also want you to do more, just depends on what they want you to do basically. But for free, you get a degree at the end of it as well. So that is even better than going to just doing a degree by itself. Imagine you get a degree and you've been working, and out of it, these usually last for about 4 years-ish. Sometimes it could be longer, sometimes it could just be less. But obviously you got to remember the fact that you're getting a degree out of it. So it has to at least last the length of completing a degree while you're working pretty much full time. So that could be anywhere to 4 to 6 years maybe. And there's a commitment you have to make. But at the end of it, not only have you got 4 years of experience also, you will have a degree at the end of it as well. For free. I can't even stress how amazing that is. If I was to tell my parents I could get a degree for free, they would laugh at me. They're like, what are you talking about? You're lying. They wouldn't believe me. But it's true. Check out degree apprenticeships. Okay, grad schemes. For those who have actually gone to university, grad schemes are a thing. Grad schemes tend to be sort of placement based, 1 to 2 years, usually 2 years. And they can be a bit picky on the kind of degree that you've done. So sometimes they may ask for a computer science degree if you're from a very, very particular company and a very particular tech-based role. But at times they can say STEM degree, which is a bit more relaxed. So you could do maths, you could do something like that. And often, if you're lucky enough, they may actually say, actually, we don't really care what degree you've done. If you've done a degree, that's perfect. But you got to showcase your profile that you're actually really interested. And that's where, doing things like learning, doing projects, doing certifications, regardless of what stage you're at, can help you get into any of these gateways, be it an apprenticeship, be it a grad scheme. You need to differentiate yourself anyway from the competition. And a grad scheme, if you think of it like a role, because ultimately it is a role, to beat the competition, you can't just apply with your degree. You've got to apply having potentially done certifications, done projects, built a profile to show, actually, I'm serious about this career and I really want to get into tech. And actually, I've been doing this for a while now. And you're showcasing that to them. That is how you would set yourself apart from the competition. I'll go into boot camps in a second because that's really, really important. Let's talk about junior/entry-level roles. So junior/entry-level roles effectively says you will study yourself, do as much studying and self-learning and doing all the things that I just mentioned, maybe to a slightly greater degree, and then applying directly for a junior/entry-level role. And I know people who have done this and have been able to get into those, junior IT support analyst and entry-level support analyst roles or junior DevOps roles, for example. And they may not necessarily have these backgrounds of a degree or even an apprenticeship, for example. So junior and entry-level roles, I would say, is where everyone should start to think about first anyway. But you should never limit yourself to one route, because any of these routes could be a potential gateway to kickstarting your career in tech. Okay, let's talk about this get-rich-quick scheme. A get-rich-quick scheme, I call it a get-rich-quick scheme, but it's these really dodgy schemes that some of you may have heard about, where they kind of reel you in for a certain amount of time. And if you try to leave, you have to pay them back like 30K. The UK, I believe, is trying to make that very illegal now. But a lot of these schemes are very predatory in what they get you to do, the kind of experience you get out of it, and how long they require you to stay there for. And if you try to leave, again, like I said, they effectively try to make you pay back. QA used to have the fees at the end of it, where if you don't continue, you'd have to pay back, but they've actually recently abolished those fees. So I really, really applaud them for doing that. And many other schemes are slowly starting to follow in those footsteps. I believe FDM is one of them as well. My point about this one is they promise a lot, and you may not necessarily get what you're after by doing so. So with these schemes, if you ever heard about them, FDM is one of them, and there's I think Sparta Global might be another one. There's a load of them. Definitely do your research about them. That's something you really, really need to take a time and think about, and don't just throw yourself in. I tend to say to people, if that is an opportunity, make it your last opportunity. Exhaust all other avenues and gateways before you decide that this is the only option that I have. Boot camps. This is the last one before going to the next slide. Boot camps are fantastic. Boot camps are condensed learning opportunities where you get to not only do potentially some certifications, it usually does involve that, and they usually have it paid for you. You tend to also be able to do some labs with the instructor, but also you are able to do projects as well as part of the bootcamp to build this profile. And at the end of it, generally, most of them try and help you to get into a career. So they'll line up interviews for you. They'll line up other jobs for you to apply for, because usually these bootcamp providers are quite buddy-buddy with these companies. The UK have a tech skills shortage, and there's a huge effort by the UK government to pretty much upskill everyone from 16 upwards, even younger than that as well, in tech, which is why if you see maybe your younger brothers and sisters are studying Python at school where you never did it before. IT as a GCSE has actually been scrapped, has now been replaced with computer science, for example. So doing so, the next generation of techies will be much more technical, and you'll have more and more people moving into sort of that role. That's the effort that's been planned there. And bootcamps are fantastic because they are, like I said, condensed, so they're much shorter. Usually you'd see them between 8 and 12 weeks as opposed to 8 and 12 months. Of course, you're not necessarily being paid for that time, that's where an apprenticeship is a bit different. But that is what a bootcamp is. I usually think of it as like a mini apprenticeship, but certainly having something like that on your CV is also fantastic. I know people who have, and they're very close friends of mine who have gone through boot camps and are now in their tech roles. It works. Pretty much all these schemes, all these gateways, you can say, work. And so this is the kind of process every single person, I wish, if you can screenshot this, this is the method to basically being able to build your way through any of these gateways, to kickstarting your career in tech. If there's any takeaway, if you didn't care what I said for the past half an hour, that's fine. But if you take this away, I'll be happy. Just take this away, if anything, because this is really important. Start by finding your interest. What discipline within tech really fascinates you? Maybe you did an analytical kind of degree. Maybe you did a mathsy kind of degree. So something maybe like data, maybe analytics, maybe AI, ML. These are kind of things that potentially might be you'll be more inclined towards. That doesn't mean that necessarily you have to pigeonhole yourself into that, but start by looking into things. Maybe sit a course or two and see if it's something that really interests you. And if it does, you can start moving forward. A lot of you will have done that anyway before you sat your degree. When you sat your A-levels, maybe you went into a degree that had nothing to do with your A-levels, but you still took that leap of faith. So start by finding an interest and start learning about it. After you've done your learning, you go through these courses, be on Udemy, whatever, you'll start to be a bit more, okay, I get that, I understand it. Let's do some labs around that, right? There are a load of lab providers, many lab providers that exist out there. I work for one of them, Cloud Academy, but I'll mention our competitors now as well. Cloud Guru, Pluralsight, they're kind of the same. Linux Academy used to be one fantastic one. They've been combined into them as well. And there are various other lab providers out there as well. You can Extreme Labs, Skillable, many. But labs are basically our instructionals, tutorials that you can just follow and read along and produce something at the end of it, right? But projects are a bit different. Projects are you hosting it in your own environments that potentially maybe you have to pay for, not necessarily. A lot of times it can be free as well. but you build your own things and you get to showcase to your potential employers that, look, these are the things that I built with my knowledge. I did that. There wasn't someone telling me how to do that. I did it. Okay, and you've done that. What do I do now? Now that I put all that stuff on my CV, and it should get certified too. Maybe that'll be the cherry on the top. Get 1 or 2 certifications. Don't get a million. It's not worth it, especially at entry level. They'll expect a lot of you. I know people who have done so many certificates. And then when they went to the interview stage, this was an ex-AWS interviewer. When they went to the interview stage, he interviewed them, and the interviewee just waffled. They had no idea what they were talking about, yet they had all of these certificates on their CV. The problem is it can come to bite you in the butt. If you have a certificate, they're going to expect that, okay, well, you've at the very least learned the content for that certificate. So I'm going to test you on that content. So a certificate, you can get really easily. If you use basic exam practice by just memorizing, going through questions, learning the content, watching videos, you can pass the certificate. No one's going to stop you from doing that. But to understand the content and really get to grips with what it's about, labs and projects are where it's at. Add that to your CV. Then once you've built this profile of, actually, I am starting to look like a techie now, employers can see me and potentially take me on, you start choosing a gateway. And don't limit yourself. Apply to multiple different gateways. Apply to apprenticeships, apply for grad schemes if you've got a degree, apply for boot camps, apply for a myriad of different things. Don't limit yourself. Whatever comes your way, think about it, understand based on your situation, is this right for me to take for this length of time, and the amount of time that I'm giving to it? And if it is, potentially, again, think about your own situation. I'm not telling you to do this, but potentially take that leap of faith. That is the way you'll break into tech. There is no other way. Internships do exist. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of these times, interns are generally exploited. You're not really given the best works to work on. So you may catch a break and get an internship where you're doing fantastic things and be able to build your profile. But that's why we tend to say is, look, volunteering takes time. And a lot of you might have a family, you might have a whole career that you've done for the last 10 years and you're trying to move into tech. You've built a life, and that life can't just stop for you. So certainly volunteering may not be the best way to move forward. And that's why I said don't volunteer. And keep learning and don't stop. Just because you've now broken into this career, hopefully you've now found an entry-level place to basically begin and kickstart your career. Don't stop learning now. You've started your career, and the career is about learning and constantly evolving and building. And you may think that's really long. I just want to go in and just do my 9 to 5. And you can do that in tech. You can just go in and do your 9 to 5. But if you remember those questions that were asked earlier, money good, you have to be really good at coding, having a stable tech career. If you have skills that you're constantly building, you will be in constant demand. You will be headhunted. And even if a company goes bust, a sector goes down, you can very fluidly move in to another company. And if Neil wants, he can tell you quite easily about how that's certainly possible. Is really, it can be done, but you have to have the skills to pay the bills. And so you got to keep learning and don't stop. So that's just a summary of basically everything I said. You can screenshot that as well, grab courses, find a section of tech that interests you, do labs, get hands-on technologies, do projects to exemplify your skills, get a basic certification or 2 in that space, add it to your CV, break into tech via a gateway, and be more than your JD. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adil. That was very, very informative. And we have recorded the video, so we'll be sharing the video with those who attended as well. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions. We already have one question in the chat. Marsha is asking, entry level is better than internship?
Yeah, so if we think of, to clarify what I meant by entry level is like a junior level role that's advertised. It tends to not necessarily come with many prerequisites of what you have done before getting in, but you're going to be paid. You're going to be paid in that role. It's an entry level job. An internship, you're not going to be paid. 99% of them you're not going to be paid for. And even if they promise you, they can potentially go back on their promise. So ultimately, if you're trying to build a career, you've got mouths to feed as well. So an entry level role will always be better than an internship, by far, 100%. Want a bit more information, you can expand on your question. I can answer that. But yes, an entry level role, junior level role is certainly better than internship.
We have got another question. What kind of tools would you recommend learning to get into a cloud computing role?
Good question. I think first and foremost, the blatantly obvious one is obviously a cloud skill. So cloud, you start with a cloud provider, be it AWS, GCP, so this Google's cloud platform, or Azure, that's the one I work with in particular, and start kind of learning that tool. That is ultimately a tool in your toolbox. Then around that, you may want to look at Linux. So it's that not only is a platform, but there is a command line interface to that. And so that's based on Unix Bash. And so there are courses to do with Linux, and you can see how to basically be a Linux administrator and start to do Linuxy things with that. It's very powerful. I was doing Linux yesterday. So Linux is something that's really powerful. Another thing when getting into cloud is looking at scripting. So scripting is not coding and programming, but utilizing some form of coding or programming language to write up something to automate. So for example, let's say every single time you see this come in, there is a piece of code that runs, that pulls that thing and puts it somewhere else, right? That could be done with maybe 1 or 2 lines of code, for example. And generally speaking, the kind of scripting languages that exist are like PowerShell. You can actually do it with Python as well. So if you want to learn Python anyway, you can start learning Python and do scripting with Python. I scripted Python and I used to script with PowerShell. And obviously Bash scripting as well. So that's Bash on Windows, but also general sort of Bash with Linux as well. I learned its commands. So that'll be another really important one from there. After that, really those I would say are key things to have, but having general knowledge of technologies. And another thing to really do as well, by the way, is have a look at the job descriptions. Go on LinkedIn Jobs, grab a job description for a job that you're interested in or a career that you're interested in, and see what they're asking for. No 2 job descriptions are the same, so you want to capture like quite a few of them. I'd say at least 5 to 10, and have a look through all of them, look at what the commonalities are, and take that to be, okay, that's where I'm going to start. And another piece of advice as well, when you are doing these learnings, don't try to learn 5 different things at once. Do 1 or 2 things, stick to that, complete it, get to a good stage where you're really comfortable with it, move on. And again, with cloud as well, I also want to expand on this. Cloud is huge. I know I mentioned it's a tool, but within there's subtools. There's so many services. Depending on what discipline you choose, as we chose earlier, you may even only choose a subset of the services within a cloud provider. If you're a person who's a data analyst, data scientist, you may only ever use the data tools that are on these cloud providers. If you're someone who is working with infrastructure, you may only use the IaaS, the infrastructure services that exist on these cloud providers. So I guess it starts off with where in cloud you potentially want to go. Usually I'd say infrastructure. If someone's asking if they want a career in cloud, I'd say potentially infrastructure is where you want to be. That generally is where most people are. And then focus on that sort of niche within that. I'll add one more to that. I don't want to add too many, but I'll add one more. And that is learn an infrastructure as code. And if you don't know what infrastructure as code is, we can't really go through it right now, but it's a nice way to basically write up infrastructure without having to go into the GUI and click on bits to deploy things. So you can write it up in some form of very simple code format, and you basically give it almost like an instruction manual or a menu even. You're saying to the waiter, I want this, I want this, I want this. You give it to the waiter goes back to the cook, and he cooks those things that you asked for. In a very similar way, your infrastructure as code are things that you write down as things you want to deploy to your cloud provider. You've written it down, you hand it to the cloud provider says, all right, and starts deploying the things that you said in exactly the way you've written it. Okay, so those are the things I'll summarize. Your obviously cloud provider of choice, Linux, maybe a scripting tool as well, a scripting language as well, and infrastructure as code, IAC. So if you have those 4, you'll be in very good stead to break into a cloud career. Sorry for answering that for so long.
Thank you, Adil. Another question is that what is the starting point for an IT project manager?
An IT project manager. So with an IT project manager, I would consider them to be not necessarily a techie, though it is within the tech space. And so with an IT project manager, there are project management courses that you can take, and you can certainly begin from there. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. Do you mean in terms of what they have to do, or in terms of where their salary can sort of start from? I would imagine they would start from around 30 to 40. But
Adil,
yes.
I can help with this.
If you could, please.
No worries. One of my many roles over my career in tech was as a project manager. A good way to start is get yourself a foundation. So a Prince 2 or an Agile. Management of risk is another. So go and pick up one of those. You can do the foundation rather than the full practitioner, particularly on Prince 2. I think one of the things that people get drawn into with project management in IT is project management in IT. Project management can be anything.
Yeah.
So actually, I took my Prince 2 certification and used it to help me build my house. So once you're a project manager, don't get pigeonholed into necessarily thinking it has to be IT. It lends itself very well to IT, but actually it opens up lots of other areas outside that as well. So my advice to you would be to go and get something like a Prince 2, an Agile, a management of risk as a foundation, and start running projects. Get yourself a piece of software. You know, Microsoft Project's the obvious one, but it's a good tool. You can do it in Excel. You can do it on a piece of paper. What's happening when? What are the orders? Who's doing it? And that's the fundamentals. So a foundation in one of those methodologies would be the way I would start.
Cheers. No, I really, really appreciate that. I'd also say, just echoed what I said before as well, is check out a job description for project managers and see what they're doing and find the commonalities between all these different job descriptions for project managers, and you kind of get an idea of what profile to build yourself for basically a project manager. A very common tool I see is Jira, that a lot of project managers you'll use, and that seems to be an industry trend. So it could be something for you to have a look at, Jira. But it doesn't have to be. So any kind of sort of agile project management tool will obviously suffice to show your skills in that realm. But cool, Neil basically answered that for us, so fantastic.
Thank you, Adil. Another question, and thank you, Neil, for your clarification. Do you think that companies such as FDM are kind of better to leave as a last opinion?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did also obviously explain that they can be very predatory. So you need to be wary and do your research before necessarily accepting a role with them. They're very easy to bring people in, and that's another problem. A lot of people sort of apply to them very early on, and they get through to them really quickly, and they get a job, or they get a place with them, I should say. And so often I get the question, should I take it? Should I take it? I hear so many bad things about it, so many bad reviews. And those bad reviews and those bad things that you hear can very well be true. And a lot of them are true. I know people who have worked with them. So that's why I say, look, because of the predatory practices that they engage in, be careful. Don't just throw yourself headfirst in because you've got with them, and don't even look at them until, like I said, or even someone who's actually asked, as your last option. You've got no choice. And if that's the case, then potentially have a look at that as your option. But there are many other gateways, as we spoke about today. Let's see if I can still go back. I can. There you go. Loads of different ways you can break into tech, and what I call the get-rich-quick schemes. It's those kind of promises that they make you to very, very quickly and easily get into tech. They can have negatives as well. Many of them are true, and I know people who have unfortunately gone through them as well. So don't get sucked into it straight away, and definitely leave it as a last option.
Thank you. Adil Jumail is asking, can you tell us more about labs? I'm familiar with projects, but have heard of labs for the first time today. Are they free? Would you consider them more important than projects?
I would consider them a preamble to projects. So what a lab is a hands-on environment that is made for you. Someone else is hosting it, but it's a hands-on environment that's made for you where you can practice your technologies, right? It's usually instructional. So it usually be like a tutorial that you follow, but you're going to be working on that lab provider's environment because they are hosting all of the infrastructure to basically make that lab, right? So in the case of Cloud Academy, we host these infrastructure. If you were to sign up with us, then you may be able to do some labs with us, of course, using our environments in limited scope, where you can deploy things and basically practice your cloud skills, for example. And like I said, they're instructional, they're usually more tutorial based. Projects are a bit different. They're also hands-on, but they're usually in your own environment as opposed to someone else's environment. And they can be as expensive as you want it to be. I'd say that much. So they can be free, they can be how much money you want to put into it. You can have projects where you're just literally creating things. One of the early projects I used to make, I can't actually show it here, but I had like a Raspberry Pi, and on my Raspberry Pi, I would set up like an ad blocker, a network filter. I'd connect that to my devices. I'd have it between the router and all my network devices, and I'd really set it up completely. And I'd put that on my CV. I said that I set up a DNS-based ad blocker / network filter. Obviously, you fancify it to make it sound really nice for your CV as well. But that's the whole essence of a project. It is really whatever you want it to be. You're not limited in scope to just learning the technology. You're putting all these skills that you've learned and making whatever you want out of it. Now, there are pre-made projects you can take online where it's kind of tutorial based, but ultimately you'll be doing it in your own environment and you'll be building it from start to finish, and you will have created something at the end of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that what you're going to make is revolutionary, but that's basically the difference between labs and projects.
Thank you, Adil. Another one, Billy is asking, do you know of any companies actively recruiting mature candidates? I am 47 and trying to break into the industry.
I'd say now more than ever in 2022, age doesn't matter really anymore. It's really what you showcase on your CV. And when you go through a lot of these gateways, many of them have now lifted a lot of the original requirements. Apprenticeships are a fantastic example. It used to be the case that you couldn't even have a degree before getting into an apprenticeship. It now doesn't matter if you have a degree or not before doing an apprenticeship, as long as it's not directly to do with the apprenticeship that you're doing. It also doesn't matter about age anymore. They've also gotten rid of that as well. So there's no ageism around a lot of these gateways too, especially boot camps. Boot camps are open for anyone of any age, of any discipline, of any background. There's no limit to how old you have to be. So anyway, to get back to your question, are there companies that are actively recruiting mature candidates, you could say? I'm not sure of any that are actively recruiting, but if you showcase the skills and the relevant projects and things to bring to the table, there's no way they can say no to you. And if they do, then obviously that's an ageism thing, right? And you can certainly bring that up to their HR and play that card if you very well need to. But yeah, if you build your profile and you actually showcase to people that you can do the job, then you can certainly get into these roles.
I would also like to add to that.
Thank
so
you.
at SNAIA, we also help a lot of candidates who are just starting their career into tech, and we would love to help you with that. And if you would like to get into training opportunities, we have many training opportunities as well. So the starting point is to go to our website, naya.ai, and create your profiles. And if you have any questions, just let us know.
That's on my to-do list very quickly.
Sure. Thank you, Billy. So where do you get good Linux projects? Ahmad is asking.
Good Linux projects to do. Honestly, there are a lot of good Udemy courses out there. I'm actually going to try to find some now. But a lot of these Linux courses, if you type on Linux, you type in Linux projects, you'll get an entire Udemy course based on, I'll even paste it into the chat now, entire Udemy course based on building projects around Linux. And also, honestly, believe it or not, Google is fantastic. We just type in Linux projects, you can get a bunch of different projects that you can do to showcase your knowledge. I'll paste that into the chat again. So cool, I pasted them into the chat so you can have a look at the different projects you can do. But yeah, definitely Google them for any more.
Thank you, Adil. Another question from Lukman is asking, is 1 to 2 hours a day doing certifications, IELTS, Azure, etc. after work sufficient to develop foundational level skills in cloud computing?
Yeah, I would say doing 1 to 2 hours a day is the recommended amount you should be doing every day to basically build those skills. You said the word certification, so obviously I'm going to say that if you want to develop foundational level skills in the cloud, the certificates will certainly give you a syllabus to learn from. And you'll learn a lot of things from it. But until you do labs and you do projects, like I said, you'll very quickly forget about what's where and how to do things. So if you want those foundational level skills, you need to do the labs and projects, not just learning for the certificates. But in terms of the number of hours that you can spend a day doing something, 1 or 2 hours doing learning, developing, labbing, projecting is certainly a good number to aim for. Yeah, for sure. And you can do more, fantastic.
Another question from Menas. I have done Google Data Analysis Certificate and created my portfolio on GitHub, but still rejected. What's your recommendation to do next?
Okay, so you've done a certificate, so that ticks off. Let's go back on our slides here. Okay, so done certificate. We know that a certificate is the smallest reason for you to be able to land an next role anyway. So certificate is good, but it's not the be all and end all of things to do. So you said that you've created a portfolio on GitHub, which means you're showcasing projects and the things that you're doing to bridge that experience gap. If you're doing those things, then the next stage, which is obviously is not the topic for today, but maybe Banu, we can sort something out, is how to basically build the CV and also interview prep for a tech role. And those are two important things. If you've got a banging CV, you'll be able to get an interview. And that's all a CV is good for, is to get you into the interview stage. After that stage, it's all about you and how you showcase yourself in the interview, not just with confidence, but being able to talk the talk about the technologies that you've mentioned on your CV as well. There are ways to break down your CV, and potentially we can go through that one day. But at that stage, what I would say is get your CV reviewed, ask someone to have a look over it, and make sure the person who you're having to look over it is someone who is techie and is in the role that you're looking to get into. So they're the kind of person that you want to look at. Maybe their manager or their director as well, but certainly there are some people that they'll look at your CV and be like, yeah, you got it, fantastic, it's all good, but they may be sugarcoating it. Kind of want someone to be as strict as possible. But I'll give you some very, very quick pointers now, just for your CV. It should be 1-pager. Shouldn't be any longer than that, especially as entry-level role. If you have 7 pages of a CV, cut that. It's way too many. 1-pager. It should be relevant. So all your experience points, even if you haven't got IT experience, tailor them to be as close to the things that you're learning as possible. You need to showcase your projects in good amount of detail, but not too much detail that takes up too much space. And don't write the word personal projects, just write projects, okay? Have a short profile. Don't do the usual cliche thing where it's like, I'm a passionate, hardworking individual who loves to say what you are. You are an aspiring DevOps engineer, or you're a junior DevOps engineer. You're skilled in Kubernetes, Terraform, and you're interested in learning more about TerraGrunt and IAC management, whatever. Anyway, something really short and to the point, basically. If you're getting into interviews, that means your CV is enough to get you there, which is a good stage to be at. You can still improve it, but it's a good stage to be at. And after that, it's interview skills and interview practice. The best way to get better at interviews is just to do more of them. Apply for hella roles and you will fail a lot, and as did I. But as you do more and more interviews, and at each interview, you have to make sure you're learning it, because if you don't take away from each interview, you won't be able to perform better in your next one. You'll be stagnant and it will just be the same situation every single time. But each interview has to get better. So you have to learn. In the interview, at the end of the interview, ask them. So could I ask you, what did you learn about me today? What do you think you liked about my interview? And what do you think I could have done better? Put them on the spot straight at the end. I know Neil would have hated if I asked him that. I wasn't that advanced back then when beginning my career. I'm really audacious now. I ask these questions. You have to be confident enough to ask these questions.
You still used to ask back then, mate. Don't worry.
I thought I did it, you know.
One other thing, I have to go in a sec. The other thing I was going to say, just really to reiterate what you said. As a manager, as an IT director, when you get people come through the door that are apprentices, push yourselves, because it does impress. I mean, Adil was good at this, right? He was always asking, can I do this? I want to do that. Now, he was a bit of a pain sometimes, but I loved his enthusiasm, and I'd much rather someone keeps asking than sits in the background and doesn't get involved, because by asking, I gave him stuff and that helped him learn. The other thing, finally, and I have to go, so mate, it's been good to see you and it's a great presentation and well done. The other thing, sell yourself, okay? When you get into these places, sell yourself, ask questions, volunteer, help. be a team player, because having the tech skills and, you know, being enthusiastic is all well and good, but actually being a team player, working with your leadership and the people that work alongside you, they are the things that are going to get you noticed and get people to give you more opportunities. So that's my final thought. I have to go. Good luck to everyone. Adil, it's been great to see you, and I'll be in touch soon, mate. All right.
Thank you so much for joining
Thank
us,
you.
Neil. Thank you
Cheers.
so much.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Fantastic.
Adil, we have got just 1 minute, so I'm taking the last question from Marsha. She's asking, can you explain how referrals work? How can you ensure you are building your own project and not just following along with the tutorial?
Let me answer the second question first and come back to the first one. How can you ensure you're building your own project and not just following along with a tutorial? It's okay to start off by following a tutorial because you're trying to build your confidence with these technologies, right? Sometimes the way I do it is this something that I'm doing in my day-to-day that I could just fix? That's really annoying me. That's really bothersome. I'll give you a really good one. I use Visual Studio Code. It's a development environment where you can basically write up codes and scripts and stuff, right? And there's a thing called Workspace. And what happens is you have to always click on places to add things. It's a very, very infuriating and long process, right? So I was thinking literally yesterday, I was like, man, wouldn't it be good if there was a command line interface where I can just type in code workspace, add folder, and I just literally just write the path to the folder and it will just add the folder to my workspace. That'd be fantastic. And I messed about with a few things and it seems like it's possible. So I was like, all right, maybe I can code this in Python. I Googled how to write a command line interface or CLI in Python. That exists. And I'm starting to work on that. I don't need to obviously work on my own projects, but that's something that I actually really want to do because it's fun to do. And obviously I'm getting some, junior guys, for example, that I know are working on it with me, for example. So that's a good thing to do, is trying to solve your own problems is a really good way to find a project to do. But I'd also say is if you are following tutorials for a project, kind of acts like a lab, but if you are following a project, tutorial for a project, make sure it's a good enough project, it's long enough that you can learn a lot from, right? If it's a project that can be done in 1 or 2 hours, I would more consider that to be more like a lab. But if it's one that could span maybe a day, maybe even a week, because it will take you time to put together, maybe it's a woodworking project, maybe you're following a tutorial, but you're using your own wood, your own drill and woodworking tools to put together this thing, and you have created it with your own hands that you can then put on your shelf. Sometimes it's okay to follow a tutorial, but make sure it's worthwhile, that you're getting enough out of it, that after that, you can be like, you know what, I can probably do this myself now. Maybe I'll change up some of the techniques and some of the facets of it, but I can do it myself now. To begin with, though, it's okay to do a tutorial based on. Okay, the other question was, can you explain how referrals work? It depends how you mean. If you mean like when you have like references on your CV, like you say, references can be provided afterwards, then it'll be the case like, oh, once you get the role, the company would talk to the references that you provide. So it won't be before that. You get the role first and then they'll talk to your references. If you're talking about referrals in terms of like how, when you're already with a company, or how if someone else is with a company and they want to bring you in, it differs from company to company. So a company could be like, yeah, if you refer someone, then we'll fast track them into an interview stage, for example. That's not the case for every single referral. So I can't vouch for every company. Or if you're talking about Naya's referral scheme, then speak to Banu, then she'll tell you all about that.
Yes, definitely, Marsha, I would love to help. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. There are 2 more questions. So
I can try to quickly get through them if you like, or...
Yeah, one of them is asking if it's okay to reach out to you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. And the other one is asking, how does one break onto the DevOps field? Self-studying, are many different skills required, like coding, cloud, etc.?
Yeah, so DevOps is kind of like that step higher than if you were to be a cloud engineer, for example, because you not only need to know about a cloud provider and have some proficiency with that, you need to be good at Linux, you need to be good at an infrastructure as code, such as Terraform. That's usually the industry standard. You potentially need to get involved with configuration management. So you're going to be looking at Ansible, for example, or or Puppet or Chef, these sort of configuration management tools. You also need to potentially look at Kubernetes, Docker Kubernetes. So that's about containerization, basically containerization tools. Then you're going to be looking at maybe monitoring. In fact, you know what? I actually have this written up somewhere. If you can bear with me for like 30 odd seconds, I can get you what some of us have written up together on this community. Where is the resources? There you go. Okay, I'll paste that into the chat. And I would paste the more detailed one into the chat now as well. Will it let me? I don't know if it will let me. I'll take a screenshot instead. Oh, it doesn't let me. Okay, if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I can send that to you. But yeah, that's how I would say you'd sort of break into learning DevOps by yourself with the stuff that I've just mentioned there.
Great. Thank you so much, Adil. I've just pasted my email and Naya's website in the chat. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. So once again, thank you so much, Adil, for joining us. It was a very, very informative session, and I hope it was useful for all of the attendees. We will be organizing these kind of events more often. So in order to receive these events to your email, please let us know if you have any questions, and also create your profiles so that you receive more info about the future events. Do you have anything to add at the end, Adil, or?
Work hard, keep learning, do certificates, do projects, and you're more than your JD. I'll leave it there.
Great. Thank you so much once again, everyone, and have a nice day.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.